All right. Can you hear me? If shut WKRP and since say that. Sorry. Outstanding, Jim. Except for the Yankees play here. And the games the last 2 nights are great. Not quite as depressing as playing wars, though, and you know. Hey, welcome back, folks. Welcome back. I am your host, Cliff Schechter. This is Cliff's Edge. You may know it, the YouTube channel at Cliffs_Edge. Please subscribe. You may be familiar with the Substack at BlueAmp, BLUEAMP.co. Please subscribe there. You know, it's about 147 degrees outside. I think most of you going through this. But I'm a Cincinnatian, coming to you, as I always say, from the Queen City, the Radio City. Grew up in New York originally. Like my friend Jim Williams, I'm a Yankees fan, so my son became one. I root for the Reds otherwise, but the last 2 nights I had to sit in ballparks in 147 degrees and watch my team lose while sweating in places that I don't even think I have places. So, hey, that was fun. And today I am actually, you know, you got to do it for the kids, guys. To sort of promote the World Cup here. I'm also a soccer fan. There is a international game, Borussia Dortmund, if any of you are familiar, versus, let's see, Ulsan, which is from South Korea. Borussia Dortmund's a very good team from Germany. I think I know who's going to win this one, but it starts at 3. We're going to get there a little bit late anyhow, but that means I'm going to be here just for about a half hour to 40 minutes. David Schuster will join us and Matt Robeson. David will probably stay a little bit after me. Matt will take it through to at least 3, maybe a little bit after that. So you got me for at least 30 minutes. So who cares about sports? Some people care about sports, Tulian. I mean, sorry. And really, the sports were more of a way of me telling you, A, it's freaking hot, and B, the reason why I had to leave early today and why I won't be here for a full hour or hour and a half. So that's really what that was about. Ice going to show up with the soccer match. They might, MJ. Hi, Lefty Gramps. Hi, MJ. Thank you, guys. Remember, folks, we do. I can't do a. Are you coming with me at the end? So anybody who wants to support our effort here, likes what we do, fighting the bad fascist iced people, do me a favor. Think about giving a super chat or super sticker, 99 cents, whatever. Nothing's too small. Definitely think about subscribing. But I want to get to something I want to talk about that you saw probably in the thumbnail that I don't think anybody's talking about right now. The Home Office is pissed, guys. Vladimir Putin, little Pooty, is pissed, and I'm going to tell you why. And I think he's shopping around for a new president. And what does that mean? I don't think he's going to do anything that would risk a nuclear war with us. But Donald Trump has failed him. You have failed me, Anakin. This would be like dumb, diaper wearing Anakin. But in all seriousness, the reason why Donald Trump is where he is because of Vladimir Putin. The reason why, and we all know this, the right can say they're Russia hoax because they think that makes it sound different than the billions of contacts between Trump and people that work for Trump and everybody around him and the policies they take and everything else that have to do with that make Vladimir Putin happy. You may remember there's one thing that Trump needed to change in the 2016 Republican platform, and he did, and that was that we would protect Ukraine. Trump to Putin, he wants to get the old empire, the old boys back together. Ukraine is part of his. So his expectation was Donald Trump would get into office. Then it didn't happen that first time, failed. Biden stopped him because Biden actually, has a scrote, if you will, unlike Trump. And Donald Trump, again, came in and Putin assumed we're good. Now Trump will take care of me. But he hasn't, because Zelensky is Churchillian and put drones in trucks and humiliated Putin. $40,000 or $47,000, I think, created $8 billion in damage. That made him look stupid. And the only reason the war is still going on is Putin sees it. People fail him, right? He can never fail, much like Trump sees it. The difference is he sees Trump as failing him. Trump was supposed to have delivered Ukraine. And Trump, as we know, every time talks about it, berated Zelensky in the Oval Office, and Zelensky made him look stupid, has tried to pull back from supporting him, and the little Russia supporters, little Putinites like Marjorie Taylor Greene and others have tried to stop Ukraine funding too. He said everything about Putin, that's a positive. He wanted Putin to the G7 to go back to being the G8, let Putin in, and they were like, no, we don't let homicidal dictators in, sorry, which maybe Trump thought they're talking about him. Which is ironic right now, by the way, because for this NATO summit, they're in The Hague, and I'm wondering if we could get some guys to put on some ICE outfits, anybody, and maybe just drive up, grab Trump, and get him to the court there. But I digress again. The big thing you should know that's going on is Iran is a close ally of Putin's, okay? And before we got involved and launched that attack, that pretty much was Trump, trying to show what a tough guy he was and enjoying attacking and feeling like that made him relevant and made him strong. Before all of that, you have to remember Putin came first, right? So Putin said, "Don't bomb Iran." Trump wasn't going to do anything. That's why one of the reasons he was a peace candidate, right? That was the excuse to stay out of Ukraine, to stay out of Iran, to stay out of these places. Do what Putin wants. His whole career, right, has just been basically spray tan and kissing the man-boobed horse riding guy's butt when not, doubling down on the Big Macs. But the problem is Iran is in the Kremlin club. They're buddies. We were told beforehand by Putin, don't do this. And by Putin's mini-me, you may remember there's that period of time, I think it was 2008 to 12, where Putin pretended they were still a constitutional democracy and let Medvedev take over. Well, he became prime minister. Medvedev became president, and then they didn't needed to hide it anymore, and Putin just became president for life, and Medvedev became like his mini-me. Well, Medvedev, like that dude is so expressionless. Like he looks like he's got like a Jeff Bezos' wife Botox regime going on there, and yet he got pissed when we attacked. He came out and said Trump has started a new war. Okay, that was a purposeful shot across the bow. Basically, Putin came out after that and said, are you going to pretend it didn't happen? And said that they would do everything they could to logistically support Iran, and that it was wrong, and the United States had gotten itself involved in an offensive war, and that this was because of Donald Trump. He and Medvedev, he let Medvedev do more of the talking. Essentially, it felt a lot like they were serving divorce papers to Donald Trump, which he's pretty used to by now. That's something he does know how to do. I just hope they don't send them via ballistic missile. But in all seriousness, there are others we know that are around there. Tulsi Gabbard held the line on what Russia wanted. Remember once Hillary Clinton said, I think there's somebody up on that stage during the Democratic presidential debate that's being, it's becoming a sort of Padawan to stay on that whole thing. For Russia. And in this case, of course, she was talking about Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi said there were no weapons in Iran, and whether there were or not didn't matter. She's took Bashar al-Assad's side, Russian ally, Iranian ally, supporting Iran there, has taken their side on Ukraine. She clearly is owned by them, but Trump shut her down this time and sidelined her from all reports, right? Ignored her. In addition to that, he hit back at Medvedev. So Trump suffers narcissistic injury. Trump will hit back at anybody who attacks him, but he's usually smart enough to know that Putin owns him and Putin can destroy him. But here he seems like he's starting to feel like he's a little tougher than he is. I don't know if he, Bibi is another criminal like himself. Did Bibi promise him something? I don't know. But there's a good chance that, that Bibi may have had some kind of an offering to say, it's worth it. Don't worry, Russia won't do anything about Iran. And in the end, he may be right. They may not do anything, but they're pissed. So here's Tulsi, from before. There's no evidence of Iran restarting its nuclear weapons program, which was exactly Moscow's talking points. Okay. So again, don't think about what side you're on here because they're all evil. Just think about like who the players are. And then, Trump after after that, apparently dressed down, according to numerous newspapers, and not dressed down in the way 40-something women, no, 20-something have accused him of, but he yelled at Gabbard in his office with the door open so people could hear about how she wasn't to criticize him publicly, she wasn't to question his judgment, and he has sidelined her since then. Well, now with Putin's people attacking him constantly, came out and he said, quote, Putin needs to be careful. Wow. I mean, this is the president of the United States. We were once a very powerful country. There is a secret service and stuff like that. But Putin, like, fifth floor hotel balconies and polonium tea, just saying Trump feels like he wants to pretend. And he's even sort of, he's issued that's a threat. The New Republic saw that. They mentioned that as a veiled threat at Putin. So really what you need to know here is the tone is sort of, and the tone he said it in, their writing here was not commander in chief, more mob boss who drank expired cough syrup, which is Trump very often. Now, Trump also in that same press conference lashed out and said, Iran and Israel don't know what the fuck they're doing. And, why is he so angry? I mean, I know he's an angry guy in general, but could it be that he's scared? Because he usually lashes out when he's frightened. Is he frightened? Is he frightened Putin may do something? They certainly can hurt our interests in a lot of the world and make his presidency that much more of a failure. And if you don't think they're not sitting there thinking they can still control things and install who they want, remember, one of the earliest things J.D. Vance got noticed for is when he said, why should any American care who wins in that war in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine? He was completely cool with Russia winning, right? They've got Tucker Carlson, obviously. They've got Marge Taylor Greene. They got a whole bunch of people. Any of them could run for president, as scary as that is. Elon Musk, right? Remember, Elon Musk broke into the Treasury Department with big balls who just left and for other work. He's 19 and clearly has a great resume and good name. And these other, incel children. And there were numerous reports about right after he broke into the Treasury Department. Wow, when they went in there, they got the passwords. And somehow Russian hackers within like 20 minutes had those passwords and were starting to try to break in. Elon Musk also knows his fate relies a lot upon Russia. So when you put all that together, you realize that Elon Musk going after Trump a couple of weeks ago could have been Putin inspired. Maybe he's pissed. Maybe he was hearing Donny was thinking about bombing. Now you got, I think that's more speculative. I think these other signals quite clear. Trump disobeyed his orders from the Kremlin and bombed Iran. The Kremlin is pissed and attacking him and trying to demean him, embarrass him, and make him look bad. When I say he's starting another war, that is very simply, guys, that's code in right-wing world, because it's not just he started another war. It's Trump ran on not starting any more wars. They are directly saying Trump betrayed and lied to you, to the far loony MAGA base. They're all far and loony and MAGA, but some of them are for war, some of them are against it. They're all the same crazy. So Putin shopping for a new American mouthpiece. I mean, J.D. Vance would lick that guy's boots in no time. I mean, he'd have to first break the Ohio State trophy and fuck up while ordering donuts and go to Greenland and have people slam doors in his face. But when he got around to it, eventually he'd lick his boots. And, Musk is out. These other folks are out there. I wouldn't put it past them. Again, there's nothing that I think they're going to do in a realm of, they would never try to do anything to injure Donald Trump because that would risk a nuclear war, but undermine him with their allies around the world, harm the U.S. economy further, harm our national interests or international interests further. Absolutely. And they're confident, I'm sure they're confident that they either can, elect a Manchurian candidate they prop up in the Democratic Party, although Tulsi's gone. Most seem to have gone to the Republican side who are of that ilk. But who knows? I don't, again, like Robert Kennedy couldn't go back to the Democratic Party now either. So I don't know who would be, but they could do that. Or they think that they can take Trump out and still win with another Republican because they've got that much disinformation flowing and we refuse to stop it. But that's really the lead here. Nobody's talking about it in the media because corporate media doesn't talk about anything of value. When Putin threatens Trump, he's threatening Trump. When Trump tries to sound like he's threatening Putin back, he's being like the bad toddler he was and asking him to get spanked. So, I think the tantrums are going to get louder. There are going to be more arguments. Trump will try to still maintain that he's, independent and, Vladimir Putin doesn't own me or whatever. But It'll be interesting, or he'll go in the other direction, become like suck up to Putin in a number of ways and go over the top. That will be a sign you should be looking for if he feels like he's in his bad graces and has to do something to get back in his good graces. And that is all I have to say today about our fucked up international situation and the various players in it, all of whom are people that should be put inside of that. What was it called? The Phantom Zone. Glass prism from Superman 2 and just shot out to space together. Just get them all. The Saudi, leaders, Bibi, Trump, Putin, Medvedev. World will be a better place. And now I bring the more serious, intelligent, Emmy-winning, just so much better than me.
No, Cliff, I gotta say, I love that you're picking up on the tensions between Putin and Trump. And there was a little bit of reporting. Remember, it was a couple of weeks ago when Ukraine carried off that spectacular drone attack that destroyed like a third of the Russian Air Force.
That was in the beginning of what I said, by the way, just so you know.
Oh, great. So I mean, clearly the Russians were infuriated with such an intelligence lapse, and their spies, their eyes and ears in the United States, didn't give them any heads up, or maybe because the Trump administration didn't know, because Zelensky's smart enough not to share this kind of stuff. But clearly there's been a falling out for a whole host of reasons, and it's fascinating to see. And I think your point about Donald Trump, the only thing I would add to it is not only is, when Donald Trump's scared, he sort of lashes out. I also wonder, and this, if Putin may be paying a price because of Donald Trump's own dementia, Donald Trump's senility, getting older, that older
it could be that, yeah.
When they, they start to sort of lose some perspective and they sort of lash out. And I was just, while you were on a short time ago, I was watching some of Donald Trump's, the global news conference that he had. And he really, he keeps losing a step. And I feel like maybe Trump is sensing things and sort of lashing out, and he's losing some perspective.
That's actually an outstanding point that should have been added into what I said, because again, I think Trump is losing a step. Lefty Grams, thank you for Cliff. I'll catch you. Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Cliff. I'll catch you on Substack. Hello, David. Well, thank you, our good friend Lefty Grams, who's on Substack, who's here. Awesome. If you can hang out here, hang out for a bit. Otherwise, we'll see you there tomorrow. We have Allison Gill on. I should have told folks that. Mueller, she wrote, so that should be fun. But to get back to what the point I was making is, like it could be that they're sensing that Trump is losing it. Sort of like, why would he go against us?
Mm-hmm.
After Helsinki, right? After these various performances, after attacking Zelensky the way he did, in such an embarrassing and pathetic way, he and the three of them, it was actually him, it was JD Vance, and it was Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, that guy from Right Wing News. Just what a shocker. Magically, it happens to be that guy. Again, if you're not asking questions, how many of these people are owned by Russia, when all Marjorie Taylor Greene has done is repeated every one of their talking points, and a number of what do you call it? These certain think tanks that do defensive did analysis and said, she's repeating exactly what they're saying. She's one of the worst defenders of it. So maybe they're like, well, maybe this was a bad investment. And you've got Vance there, and I talked about his history of fluffing Putin, and Elon Musk has a history of it, and there's plenty of others sitting there who have a history of that. We said Tulsi, so I don't know, but they're mad. There's no doubt about that, and Trump is trying to hit back, and it should be interesting.
Yeah, and Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, it's funny you should point out him. He has a striking resemblance to Medvedev. And I'm not saying that there's the body double, but you just sort of wonder if Marjorie Taylor Greene's friends in Moscow might include him, because, he was the one who was suggesting that, the U.S. strike on Iran, that maybe Russia should supply nuclear weapons to Iran. As a response. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, when she was on Steve Bannon's podcast the other day, one of the first things she said is, we are headed for nuclear war. We're headed for World War III. And it's like, wait a second, Medvedev is saying that.
She's repeating it. And again, it's not to say there aren't a lot of dangers. We've talked about them. I keep saying to people, you have to separate what your beliefs are on this issue and what is real, because obviously, threats of world war go up when we do stupid things. Obviously, threat of regional war goes up when we do stupid things. That's just inevitable. But it's not the sort of gloom and doom language that you saw people like, Glenn Greenwald repeating, a year ago, 2 years ago, when if we go do anything to help Ukraine, there will be a World War III. I mean, they all of them, Jimmy Dore, like their whole crew on the far left and the far right, all repeated those exact points. And Trump was there until a short while ago. I mean, again, it does make me wonder, did Bibi buy him up? The Saudis, let's remember that the Saudis, are enemies of, are staunch enemies of Iran. And also, again, another group of evil people who treat everybody horribly, but they're Sunni and Iran's Shia, and they're enemies of theirs. Did the Saudis give him another one of those glowing orbs to put his hands on? I mean, like if you're not asking these questions, this isn't conspiracies, guys. Like we live in an age of House of Cards. I watched that show. I remember with my wife, and David, you may have watched it like a decade plus ago. Was like, okay, whatever. Yeah, the president, or was he vice president time, whatever it was, pushed a woman on the tracks in the metro in DC. But, that would really happen. And now I'm like, yeah, I can see that happening. I mean, everything I used to think I knew is gone. So I think this is being responsible. I'm not telling you what I know is happening, but I'm telling you what I see, having a background in both international and domestic politics. Like when they say things, words matter. Trump's too stupid to know that. Putin isn't. Like what he's saying, he's very purposely having Medvedev say, right? Like the guy ran on no wars, and he's purposely saying Donald Trump started another war. That is going directly after Trump's brand, and Trump knows it. So
yeah, and I think in some ways, I mean, we were praising Zelensky a moment ago. Thank goodness that the Ukrainians have put up such a fight against the Russians and essentially have something of a stalemate and have caused the Russians to lose whatever, 1 million soldiers, because I have a feeling that Russia's response to the U.S. attack on Iran, they might be even a little bit more sort of daring if Russia wasn't already bogged down and wasn't already suffering because of the war in Ukraine. If we were talking about a very strong Russia that still had its Air Force and still had, 1 million troops that are not dead.
Right.
I mean, I think, and that might have, made the predicament more difficult for the Trump administration as far as figuring out what the aftermath could be of an airstrike against Iran.
I think you're right. They're weakened, and I think that in two ways it affects it. One we talked about. One is like it affects it in that Trump maybe feels a little more bold in doing this stuff. But another one is Putin is pissed, and you pointed out like that they got no heads up on the drones because Zelensky was smart enough not to tell Trump. But they've gotten none of the help they thought they would get. Again, Trump was put there and supported by Putin. The only thing changed in the Republican, committee platform in 2016 was their support for Ukraine. This has been obvious forever. This is what he wanted: a huge landmass with a lot of minerals and some natural resources. And he sees it as the kind of humiliation Trump sees it. His bankruptcies is the way Putin sees the Soviet Union dissolving. That he's, just another asshole white guy who thinks that he's been hurt by the world, and Putin wants to get all of that back together. And Ukraine was a major part of it, and also not part of NATO, which made it, rather convenient, and didn't have nukes. And that's a whole other category I don't want to get into, because that, of course, is a whole other implication of all of these things, is that people look and they're like, oh, look, Ukraine got attacked because they gave up their nukes but didn't get into NATO. Yeah. And North Korea, one of the 3 axis of evil countries that Bush named, is the only one that hasn't been attacked. What's different about them from Iran and Iraq? I mean, the motivation when Trump talks like this, but he's an idiot, and we'll talk about this, is to motivate Iran to get a nuclear weapon as quickly as possible, as well as every other place that thinks we may attack them. And that, and then every other place that may have them, like Ukraine, is like, we're not giving that up. Look what happened. So, I mean, like, it's bad all around. But I think Putin and Medvedev are so angry. I mean, the guy had one job. Like, you had one job. Give us Ukraine. You failed. Now you had sort of a 1.5. Let's call it 1A. Don't bomb our ally. And now we've done that.
Yeah, and they're experiencing what some of the Trump voters are experiencing, and that is perhaps some buyer's remorse that Trump, and again, it may not be policy related with Trump, it may just be Donald Trump. I think because he has lost a step, because he's moving closer to dementia, I don't think Donald Trump can remember the promises that he made a couple of weeks ago or who he lied to a couple of weeks ago, and as a result, he doesn't really remember some of the campaign promises. And so, okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and, bomb Iran, even though I pledged that I would not start a new war. And so you've got a lot of MAGA Republicans who are angry at him about that. I don't think Donald Trump remembers a lot of the stuff in the campaign. And I think now Vladimir Putin, Medvedev, and the Russians are also having that same sort of experience with Trump, that Trump is unstable. He's not predictable. He's not rational for whatever reason, whether it's dementia or he's crazy or he's a lunatic. And so the Russians are seeing that as well, that he's not reliable.
Right. I mean, you could come up with any old saying, double-edged sword, or, whatever you want to call it. It's that same instability that let him break down walls and say things that were so awful, racist, sexist, that attracted certain people to him that maybe wouldn't have voted for him and helped him win, which is a sick thing to even have to say, but there's some truth to that. When you saw especially some of the male voters who went his way, younger white men, Latino men, very few, it wasn't nearly as big among black men, but a little bit Asian men. I mean, it was flat out misogyny. He said things that other Republicans wouldn't have had the courage to say. So, but some of that stuff he said was because he doesn't know boundaries, because he's insane. So it's like, you got this guy who maybe was one of the few people who could have those policies that he has and win as a Republican. But then you have to live with the fact that he's still that guy, and he's going to say stupid things. He's going to say dangerous things. And sometimes eventually, you're right, the dementia is clearly getting worse, because you can watch him. He's getting very basic things wrong and forgetting very basic. And I'm not talking about like his stupidity stuff. We knew he always didn't know. Like if I'd said, write a term paper for me on the difference between Sunni and Shia, he would have been like, forever. That wouldn't have happened 20 years ago. I'm talking about other stuff, very basic stuff. He's calling people by the wrong names. We all do that once in a while. You'll say the wrong name and you realize it. No, he'll go through a whole speech and continue to call that person by somebody else's name and think that they're somebody else. Much more than that too, which maybe you can think of more examples, but
well, I know that Jake Tapper is going to be writing a book 5 years from now about that.
Yes, Jake Tapper's getting his book ready. He'll wait till there's a Democratic president so that there's no danger of him actually breaking any news that matters. And in between, he'll make sure his agent is getting him a lot of FaceTime. Who knows? Maybe there'll be some Listerine commercials. Maybe there'll be some erectile dysfunction ads. But he'll get himself out there, make sure he can make every amount of money off that famous name and access and all the things he really cares about. And then I guess we'll see what happens. And now we get to add Matt Robeson to the conversation too.
Hello, what Matt. Up, gentlemen? Hey,
hello,
David.
So Matt, yeah, and David, I see we have Kella Hella here with JP Mandel. Yes, that was an early one, which I enjoyed very much here in Ohio when he was trying to introduce, his, I think at the time, had he been chosen as vice president yet? I don't think he had. I think it was still because the two of them were in the race for the Senate. But he knew that Vance was the guy he was going to endorse, because Peter Thiel, who, by the way, also strong connections to Russia, because Rumble, that platform, has a number of oligarch Putinite investors in it. Their YouTube alternative. So, who's a Republican politician or a Republican billionaire is not owned by Vladimir Putin on some level at this point is really the question. I mean, look, you can say that straightforward. Can I tell you he, quote, owns him? No, I can tell you he's got a lot of investment in his company, and Peter Thiel cares about stuff like that. Yeah. Ooh, look at that. Thank you, Jim. So that's where we are. You got stuff? Either of you have stuff to add? As I'm gonna have to slip out in a couple minutes.
I just got a breaking news alert here. Jake Tapper has signed on to write his next book. It's the definitive takedown of Jimmy Carter.
All right.
So, apparently he's not quite done with Biden, but he's going to reach back even further. I hear Alexander Hamilton had better watch out.
Well, Alexander Hamilton did have it coming. He's going to rewrite and say Alexander Hamilton drew first is what happened in Weehawken, New Jersey.
Right, like Greedo. Don't accept any invitations from Jake Tapper to go to the Riverside on the Jersey side of the river.
Right. And I'd say also you have to remember Jimmy Carter, he was like, look, Habitat for Humanity, he hit 99. He promised he'd build 20 houses that week. He only built 12. And obviously a liar, a thief, and a scoundrel. And so I see that coming too. But that was the key story I wanted to talk about before I slip out of here. What else do we have out there? I know, Matt, you're writing a piece on Donny.
Yeah, I put out a piece, although I have to say our friends in the chats have been saying, let's just not go there. Like, can't we just stay on trashing the whole Putin Trump nexus? Like, I think people are enjoying that a lot. But yes,
we can stay there. We don't have to.
No, I have a piece out, and I'm arguing that this is whatever stripe, whatever flavor of Democrat you are, this is actually a good news result. And I come from the more center left of the Democratic Party, and I am fully willing to argue that this is good news for Democrats. So I have an argument there, so we could go there.
I think no, but strategy and tactics. I just talked to earlier Tim Fullerton, who's a friend of the show, has the Find Out podcast, where a group of those guys got together, doing really well, and he was saying somewhat of the same thing. You know, he's like, not even getting into the ideology or any of that, and that's, I would agree with him fully on this. Strategy and tactics of being a newer, younger, fresher voice who's willing to stand up to get to the older establishment that hasn't. I mean, at this point, I hate using the word establishment, but you know, the sort of the older generation of Democrats, not all of them, but many of them who have not fought back hard enough, have not been willing to stand up and fight against Trump in a way that a lot of us feel is sufficient, and also who have kind of refused to embrace certain new kind of policies that are much more far-reaching. I'll say sort of one of the last things I'll say here. Look, for us to head in a positive direction, I think one of the things that hurt us in the end in 2024 is that, and I don't do this stuff where like the winner must have run a great campaign, the loser must have run a terrible one. I think Kamala's people that was the first campaign I ever saw who understood how to mock the opposition, how to message regularly. She made freedom a Democratic word that we took back. I think she did a lot right. So I'm not sitting here criticizing her from an objective point, but the position that she was put in was sort of, and thank you again, as I always say to Merrick Garland, I like to thank him every show for this, is defending the status quo that isn't working for a lot of people. Instead of saying, I'm the agent of change, I'm going to move forward, I'm going to break up monopolies, because 6 media companies having 90% of what you read, hear, game, whatever is ridiculous, and go to any other industry that has that. Like, how about not just reforming current institutions, but creating new ones? How about creating new laws? If Reagan could make it so that stock buybacks, which were illegal until 1982, could become legal, so that all these guys do now when they make more profits is buy back their own stock, help themselves and their shareholders. We could reform that and say, you don't get to do that anymore. But what about a new, like the Consumer Financial Bureau, which they've undermined or destroyed or whatever? But what about something even more thorough about regulating CEO pay? I don't care, and saying, no, you can't make more than, 50 times what your workers make. I mean, they make at this point 1,000 sometimes or whatever. I mean, I'm talking about that kind of stuff, like new institutions to regulate economic matters, new institutions in addition to reforming ones. But let's not like defend, for the most part, there's a few of them, the institutions as they exist. They need to evolve. The Senate needs to actually take back what being a senator was, which was a majority vote, which was a filibuster that doesn't exist in the Constitution and should be anti-constitutional and illegal. I mean, that kind of stuff. And obviously, we have to contend with the Supreme Court, and that's going to make it filled with ghouls, as they proved the other day, because you can take somebody to a country they've never been to that is a country where they'll be beaten and tortured and deport them there because, I'm sorry, I just can't even, fuck you, John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett and Alito. Honestly, fuck you. I'd love to send you to one of those countries and make you have to sit there. I mean, what a bunch of evil pieces of shit. I'm sorry, I can't. I mean, just the thought of they're breaking in and grabbing fourth graders, and they came here to Cincinnati, this terrific soccer player, as I'm about to leave for a soccer game, and I'm already late, so I better go after this, from who's one of the great high school players, hadn't lived in El Salvador. He's 18 since he was 8, and they grabbed him while at school, took him, dropped him in El Salvador, didn't even take his mom and sister with him, and I don't really understand because I think they're the same status, left him there alone. in a country that obviously is experiencing a lot of violence. He doesn't know his way around. I mean, I'll say worse things if I even continue. So I'm going to say, as I always do when I sign off, well, first of all, thank you to David and to Matt, my more talented counterparts. They will continue a higher level conversation with fewer fucks in it, probably.
No,
I'm going to guess.
no.
Because
the fuck rate will only increase.
Okay, nice. I think Trump likes to say that sometimes. And that's what he's promising for if he runs in 28 and breaks the Constitution. My line I always say is, the sun sets slowly in the west. I bid you a fond farewell. Okay, I'm out of here, folks. Matt, if I shut mine down, are you good? Because
I'm just going to remove you from the stage. Watch this,
you
like
can
magic,
do that, right?
Yeah, this is like the end of Usual Suspects. Poof, and he's gone.
Look at that!
Incredible! Look, it's like a magic trick I'm running over here.
So, Matt, I've got a question for you about your call.
Go.
What are the chances now that Democrats lose the general election for the mayoral race in the fall?
All right. So, full disclosure up front, I am a New York City, Manhattan native. This gives me no special insights. I cannot say. I think the chances are very low. And the reason is, I think that ideology doesn't matter. And this is why I think this is a good news story. I think ideology doesn't matter. That label that we put on top of, well, you're a democratic socialist, you're a center, you're a blue dog. I don't think it matters to normie human voters. And I don't think the particular policy proposals down at the Elizabeth Warren-esque details matter all that much either. I think what's going to matter is he's a Democrat and he's talking about the themes that matter. Cliff got it right. He's talking about change. He's talking about the economy. He's talking about your costs. And as long as he keeps doing that, he's not only likely to win the overall general election, but he's writing the playbook for the rest of the Democratic Party, whatever stripe you are. That's my take. What's yours?
I agree with you generally. I'm sort of wondering, does Cuomo, though, now that he's lost the primary, does he line up and support this guy for the general election, or does Cuomo run against him and possibly then divide up the pie even more? I do think the Republicans are going to be scared out of their minds in New York. The people on Wall Street, the people who own real estate, between rent control, between taxes on the wealthy, free busing, free all sorts of stuff. As a progressive, I think this is great. And especially coming from a young guy, he's 33 years old. I think Democrats need to be talking about these issues. But I just think the Republicans may see this as an opportunity to rally around their wealthy GOP folks in New York and spend as much money as possible to try to block him.
I think the good news is Cuomo and Eric Adams and the Republican nominee, former Guardian Angels founder Curtis Sliwa, are kind of running in the swim. Well, I'm mixing athletic metaphors here. They're running in the same swim lane. Good one, Robeson. They're swimming in the same swim lane. They're kind of, Adams already kind of trotted out his emerging theme, which is he's saying, he's a snake oil salesman. You can't trust anything he's saying. That ain't it. That's not going to work, because again, in my mind, the key theme here is change. This is what I was talking about with Amanda Littman on the live stream yesterday. Young voters, progressives, and also conservatives, Republicans, independents. Change is the killer app of American politics, and it has been over the last 40 years. I think one can go through. This is a claim that I made in my column today. I'd be curious to see what you make of this. You may disagree with this. I think if you go back to every national election and probably most state elections since 1992, including midterms, whichever side, whichever candidate or whichever party won the change argument, best was seen as the candidate on the side of change, they won the election. I think that's the dominant leitmotif that runs through American politics over the last 40 years. The median percentage of voters who tell Gallup that they're unhappy with the direction that the country is taking, 70%. Over the last 40 years, 70% say they do not like the way things are going. And so I think as long as this is change versus more of the same, I don't see a real threat from Cuomo or Adams or Sliwa or anyone else.
I think that's a good analysis. And, the overall analysis about national elections, I do think that Donald Trump in 2016 was a reaction that a lot of people had about, oh, we don't want the Clintons again. We don't want the establishment. Here's a guy who's threatening to drain the swamp. Let's give him a chance. And then it became so chaotic between COVID and everything else that people are like, okay, no, we need to calm things down. And so Biden wins and it's sort of quiet and calm again, but then people get frustrated over prices and decide, well, Washington's dysfunctional and can't do anything about the issues we really care about. So let's have Donald Trump, shake things up again.
Yes.
So I do think there was something about change. I've got to run in just a couple of minutes, but I want to ask you in terms of overall, I mean, your column is, of course, about the New York mayoral primary and the results and whether it's good for Democrats, and you make a strong argument that it is. Where do you see Democrats in terms of the midterms? And we're now a year and a half out.
I see us. I see us kind of following the dead fish protocol, which is we're going with the flow right now. This is very much Democrats in duck and cover mode, not seeing a lot of proactivity from our friends Chuck and Hakeem. Love them. They're sort of, look, I mean, like I said, I wouldn't count myself in the progressive wing of the party. I'm a more center left guy. The way I see people who are in the progressive wing of the party is, you are my cousins. We've gotten together at the family reunion. I'm like, man, I do not believe the life you're living. That is wacky. That is wild. But we're still in the same family, damn it. Like, we need each other. We're going to be there for each other. That's the way I feel about it. We have slight variations in our approach to things. I still think that there is an opportunity for Democrats to get more proactive and not worry so much about like, oh, is it the Bernie AOC wing that's ascendant? Is it, sort of like the old guard that's ascendant? I think we have an opportunity to get on board. Oh, wait, I said I was going to up the fuck rate. Okay. We have an opportunity to get on the fucking bandwagon here of, we're going to represent change. We're going to focus like sharks with freaking laser beams on them, on your costs, on the economy. But what does the economy mean to most people? It's their cost structure. It's healthcare, it's childcare, it's rent, it's your housing, it's your food costs. And again, like, I think what you're seeing playing out here is, like, am I particularly convinced that, the idea of a chain of city-owned grocery stores is going to work? No, I don't think that is a particularly workable policy from Donny, but at the same time, it's rowing in the right direction.
And he's offering ideas, right? I mean, I think that's the biggest problem Democrats have had over the last several years is they've been just against Trump, as opposed to saying, okay, well, here's what we would do to lower prices. Here's what we would do to expand healthcare. Here's the specific actions we would take to make your lives better. And it's not enough, I think, for Democrats to be anti-Republican, anti-Trump in the midterms. To the extent that they're putting ideas out there, I think that only helps them. I got to run. Matt, great to be on with you, even for just a few minutes. Big admirer of your work. And I look forward to being on with you again sometime soon.
All right. We're like two ships that crashed in the night. Be well. Take care. See you next week. Look, here's what I'm going to do here, folks, because so here's what happened. Here's the backstory here. I got a call from Cliff. It's like, oh my gosh, I've got to go to this soccer game. Okay. And he's like, could you come in and do a little creative step in, pinch hit, be me, pretend to be me, put on one of those Mission Impossible Cliff masks. So I'm like, look, I got to do me, but I will step in. Me and David can chop it up. And then he's like, well, David can't necessarily hang around that long either. Not a problem. Here's my plan, okay? Because I want to give people value for their time here as part of this live stream. I'm going to stretch this out with just a few more observations, a few more pieces here. And I want to very much invite people to avail themselves in the chats. I love putting up the chats. I wasn't doing it before because this is more of a Cliff jam today, but I'm going to start. So I'm willing to go in the direction that you guys dictate. You can take advantage of the Matt GPT option, which is you pose a question and I will give you a well-sourced, well-researched answer and occasionally hallucinate, as one does. I'm happy to pick up on the threads that you suggest, but let me just start off by mentioning a couple. And I didn't catch everything that Cliff said and that Cliff and David said. I caught most of it. So I don't think I'm going over the same territory again. One thing is that I think the sneakiest story of the day, the most under the radar story going on here is this testimony this afternoon from Emil Bove, a top Justice Department official. He is a federal appeals court nominee who is testifying in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee for a confirmation hearing for his appointment to a federal appeals court. And the reason this is controversial is that I want to pronounce his name correctly. I'm going to try. Erez Ruveni, who was fired from the DOJ in April for truthfully testifying in the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case that they knew that they were not supposed to deport. He truthfully testified to a federal judge. Remember, if you are an attorney, if you're a prosecutor working for the Department of Justice, you're an officer of the court. You have a legal obligation to tell the truth to the court. He fulfilled his legal obligation. He kept his oath and he was fired. And now he's engaged in a lawsuit against DOJ in which he is saying that there was a meeting in which Bove said that as part of this Abrego Garcia case, that the administration would defy court orders in order to conduct its, quote, aggressive deportation agenda. And he submitted those allegations in a whistleblower letter to Congress and the department's inspector general. He says that Bove, in an open meeting and with curses, I said I'd up the fuck rate here, so here you go, that Bove openly said, we're just going to fucking ignore this. We don't give a shit what the court says. And this is the guy that Trump has put up to be a judge, to be a federal judge. And so, look, I mean, we've had so many acid tests of this administration and where we are in our politics and whether the media is being an appropriate watchdog and whether people even give a shit anymore. But I'd suggest that this is one. If you have someone who doesn't literally believe that judicial orders have the force of law, that they need to be followed, who works for the Department of frickin' Justice, if Trump thinks that this is someone who is fit to serve on the federal bench, and if the Senate, if the Republican Senate is willing to rubber stamp this, I mean, I know there have been a million other this is everything you need to know signs, but that is everything you need to know. That is a major step in the utter disintegration of the third branch of government, the third co-equal and critically important branch of government. So that is a story that I urge everyone, I'm sure you are, this is a very, very smart group. I urge everyone to pay attention to. Demand that you hear more about it from the media. Go ahead. I'll splash this up here from Jim. Absolutely. You're an officer of the court. If you make representations to a judge, look, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just Jewish, so I think I'm a lawyer. Sorry. I mean, that's the way it is. Like my daughter and I, she's 14. We're watching A Few Good Men over the last few days. She loved it, by the way. And she kept asking me questions about procedure. And I would be like, well, let me tell you what the uniform rules of procedure in a court martial are. And I'm like, okay, hold on. I'm not a lawyer. Anyway, I'm not a lawyer. But yes, lawyers are officers of the court. So there you go. I want to throw this comment up here as well. I think that this is critically important. This is really critically important. The last time there was a congressional recess, Republicans were running scared of town halls. And the reason I want to pick up on Debbie's comment here is it is really easy to get discouraged, to get exhausted, to feel like the stuff we do doesn't matter, right? I just finished talking about this Bove case, and it's like Republican senators are going to potentially just thumb their noses at the entire judicial system, their entire responsibility as senators. And it's easy to feel in that kind of a context that what we do, what we say, our voices don't matter. And I'm telling you they do. I was a congressional staffer. I was a chief of staff for a member of Congress in the summer of 2009, the summer of healthcare town halls. Does anyone remember that? Healthcare town halls, back when we were considering what became the ACA. And there was this AstroTurf campaign. It was a seemingly grassroots campaign, but come on, bullshit, right? It was a Dick Army. Well, this was a proto Tea Party Dick Army operation all the way. They ginned up their supporters, right-wing supporters, to call congressional offices. Phones were ringing off the hook to say, when is your boss going to hold a town hall? I would like to have a town hall so we can talk about healthcare. And so eventually my boss, the congressman, said, all right, Matt, I feel like we kind of have to hold a town hall. And so I called up, my boss was actually running for the US Senate at the time. And I called up, oops, wrong comment there. I called up the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. And I was like, look, this is where my boss is at. What do you think? And they said, look, we can't do it. We can't support it. If you're going to do this, we're going to have to organize. We're going to have to help you to get people there to kind of fight back, to not give the impression that this is a tidal wave of public opinion against you. You're going to have, I mean, this was like early days of YouTube. You remember George Allen and his macaca moment, right? Where the racism just came shining right through, like one of those early YouTube viral political videos. Well, that's the era we were in. And already operatives were saying, like, you know, what any value you get isn't going to be worth the viral moment that's going to get generated. And that summer subsequently proved it out. Okay. So just to bring it back to the comment, this stuff matters. Republicans are afraid of the town halls. They are deadly afraid of the town halls. They're deadly afraid of what their own constituents are saying. People, you know, look, there's new polling about this. People do not pay attention. There's quite a bit. We have new Navigator Research. They're a great polling outfit. Out fresh this morning, just showing how little attention most voters are paying. And it's very, very little. Only about a third of Americans even claim to regularly pay attention to the news, let alone political news. I had a great pollster on my show on Beyond Politics. Oh, it was last year, talking about focus group research he had done, showing that people spent less than 10 minutes a week consuming news, current news, current events. It's 0.1% of your time. You spend more time brushing your teeth, hopefully, than that. So, you know, there's this rightful impression that people are not paying attention, and they're truly not. I mean, a year ago, I wrote an article for Washington Monthly in which I pointed out that I ran down all the polling numbers. About half American voters had no idea that Donald Trump had been charged with felonies. Okay. So yes, it is true that Americans don't pay attention, but some of it is seeping through, and Republicans are deathly afraid of this. They do not want to face voters on this because of what? Because of what we were talking about before, because change versus more of the same, the economy's stupid, and don't forget healthcare. That equation is so important, and it is the playbook. It is the obvious playbook. Oh gosh, I just saw in the chats. I got to put this up. Boom. Thank you, In Tune, for a very New York centric. I had a Gristedes 3 blocks from me growing up, and yes, they were over frickin' priced, and that's part of the problem. And look, I don't think, like I said before, you know, I don't think that this Donny proposal to have city-owned grocery stores to lower food prices is going to work. I'm pretty sure economically, I could make a boring economics argument here. I'm not going to make a boring economics argument that it will not work, but it's getting caught trying, right? It's saying to voters, like, it's like Bill Bradley used to say, I'm going to try this, and then I'm going to try this, and then I'm going to try this, because I see your prices are too high, and I'm going to do everything that I can to fight back about that. All right. Let me move on. Let me do one more. I did come in on Cliff's earlier discussion about Vladimir Putin, Russia, Trump. And, look, I don't know where this is going. No one knows. It's a crystal ball thing. I just had Dan Perry, who's a mutual friend of mine and Cliff's, on the show. He is the former lead AP editor for the Middle East. He's based in Tel Aviv. He joined me on a live stream from a bomb shelter, to kind of talk about all this. He's been writing about this a lot. And so, look, he doesn't know where this is going. No one knows where this is going. But I do want to point out that I think where we are on this, I'm not sure that I see it quite the same way as Cliff does. I'm not sure that Trump is a knowing asset of Putin, that he's knowingly in his pocket. I don't think it's the image of like, hey, Donald, you will do this, you will do that. You like my phone case, by the way? It's not as simple as that. I think it is much more a matter of Putin was always in this because he thought that Trump was an asset, an unknowing asset. He was essentially a chaos muppet. He introduced him. I have a friend who's a Republican pollster who was, and he's an anti-Trump guy, who was telling me repeatedly during Trump's first term that the thing to watch out for with Trump is that everything he does is polarizing. It's not that it's necessarily popular. It's that it's polarizing. That's his lifeblood politically. Yes, MJ, 100%. He is a useful idiot. Everything Trump does is polarizing. That's why I just wrote this Newsweek article that Cliff very kindly cross-posted on Blue Amp, saying America has never been more vulnerable to terrorism. Why? Because we have this deep strategic reserve of ability to trust one another and to black start from a disorganized jumble to a fearsome juggernaut in days. And I cited the examples, Pearl Harbor, 9/11. And look, were there missteps in the post 9/11 phase? Yeah. But it showed that we have the ability to come together if we're under threat, if we've faced some kind of a large scale attack, and put some trust in whoever is occupying the leadership in the United States and strike back. And that creates deterrence. It creates it creates fear in our enemies. That's something we no longer have. And it's because we've lost that capability. And Trump has essentially driven a spike right into it. And so, taking it back to Putin, I think that Putin knew that Trump was, both per MJ, a useful idiot and a chaos muppet. He knew that he has no strategic through line in his brain. He doesn't have an agenda per se. He is about his own aggrandizement, his own power, and his own money. That's all. That's all he cares about. And so he is the easiest asset in spycraft, right? Like that's what you look for. You get people with money traps, honeypots, you turn them. Trump was the easiest mark they ever had. And the reason is that he's so easy to just unleash. They didn't know what he was going to do. Is Putin unhappy with him? Yes. He's unhappy with the approach that he's taking in Ukraine. He's unhappy with the approach he's taking in Iran. Yes, he is. But as part of the overall package, the overall chaos, the division, the polarization that Donald Trump has created in the United States, I don't think Vladimir Putin is unhappy. That was the only point that I would have raised if I had been on at the beginning when Cliff was running through this. I think overall, the massive return on investment that Putin has gotten in terms of weakening America with Trump is deeply satisfying to him. He is very content with that, even if he's thrown off a little bit right now. And I'm very, very tempted. I'm very, very tempted. I'm not going to do it. Both Cliff and I have profiled the work of Ruth May, who's University of Texas at Austin, I want to say, business professor who has done the most work of anyone. She's written this up in the Dallas Morning News, tracking. I have this beautiful graphic here. I'm almost tempted to put it up, but the print is so tiny, it's not worth it. I don't know. You can Google it. Ruth May has done the most work of anyone in the world to track the spider web of connections between Russian oligarchs and Putin and the Republican Party, and the massive infusion of funds that they started giving in 2016. And then, of course, they took it underground because they realized we don't need to do this. We don't need to get caught doing this. And so I think the investment has paid off many, many times over for Vladimir Putin. And what we've reaped from it is what I wrote about in Newsweek, is that, okay, Putin is unhappy that Trump struck Iran. He's unhappy that Trump seems to be cozying up on the sideline of the NATO summit to Zelensky. But we are weaker. We are unquestionably weaker because of Donald Trump. Nothing to do with like investment in the military or any shit like that. It's just because we are so divided. I know our national motto, E pluribus unum, right? That is it. It says it right in the motto. That's the hidden power of this superpower. That's what makes us great. And we've degraded it because of Trump. All right. I am seeing, while I was on that little screed there, I'm seeing so many great comments going on here. And I'm really, really tempted to get into them. There's just so many good threads. I don't want to pick one. So I'm going to get us out of here on two things, two quick things. All right. I'll make it three. Oof, boy. The first one I'm going to put first because it's such a stone cold bummer. I urge people to read the piece by Charlie Warzel in The Atlantic. Cliff, right before he disapparated, was talking about what a ghoul the people in the administration are. Trump is the willingness to grab innocent people off the street and ship them to foreign gulags. I certainly agree with that. I don't want to lose sight at the same time of the biggest ghoul of them all and the biggest human tragedy of them all, which is what Elon Musk did through Doge to USAID. There are, according to a study in Nature, over the next 15 years, 25 million people might die. That's their estimate. The Warzel piece lays out definitive reporting, and it's on top of reporting from Nick Kristof. It's on top of reporting from many other sources that the death and disease that's happening right now around the country, around the world, is very, very real and very full of proof. And we are underreporting on this. And our friends, our American friends, I talked about cousins before and saying like, hey, progressives, you're my Democratic cousins. Like we're all in the same family here. I'd like to say that in the larger American family, to my evangelical cousins, if you really care about the teachings of Jesus, Matthew 25:16, I believe, whatsoever you do unto the least of my brethren, you do unto me. You need to pay attention to this. You need to demand, I was talking about town halls before, you need to demand that your senators fix this. They could. This is not, incredible damage has been done, but they could fix this. Not all of those people have to die. And I'm sorry, I know, I'm bringing this, a real bummer into this. I'm bringing a real bummer into it. So I will move on, but I just don't want to lose sight of that because it's important. It's really important. Okay, I said there were going to be three things. I'm going to see if I can remember them all. Number two, there was just a comment up here about the upcoming recession. That was another piece. Here we go. VD Hertz is talking about it, right? 2 straight months of declining retail sales, crashing dollar, soaring mortgage interest rates equals stagflation, right? This is another one, along with the Bove story. I think this is another one that we have to not lose from our radar screen. I mean, we were just talking 2 weeks ago about how the whole deployment of the National Guard and the Marines to LA was a wag the dog exercise to try to remove focus from the various disasters that Trump was unleashing on the country, and to try to divert attention over there. And attention diverted. We seem to have forgotten the slow motion train wreck of the Trump tariffs and Jerome Powell's recent testimony earlier this week that the Fed is going to have to be very cautious with interest rates because of Trump's tariffs. Made the White House furious, by the way. Well, fucking deserved. Okay. And this is, again, per my earlier point about the old James Carville haiku, change versus more of the same. The economy, stupid. And don't forget healthcare. I mean, if we can keep the focus there, right? Change. We are going to focus on the economy. And I mean, this is the number one issue where Democrats have an advantage. Healthcare. It's the playbook is, we don't need to spend $20 million on a listening tour of young men. Okay. I know young men. They're like humans. They like MMA and shit. Like, okay, whatever. Talk about those three things. And I promise you, you will get young men and you will get everyone else too. All right. That was my number two. I wanted to make sure to pick up on that one. Great point. Great point. Finally, I would be doing a disservice to Cliff if I didn't mention that he has his live stream on Substack tomorrow at 2. So not here on the YouTubes, over on the Substack exclusively with the author of Mueller, She Wrote, which is very, very on point for the discussion we've had here today about Putin and Trump. And so I urge people to pop over there. So I will close out here with a big thank you to Sheldon Hughes for gifting a Cliff's Edge membership, to Lefty Gramps for giving a donation in the course of this. And I am Matt Robeson, trying to back clean up, close out here. So if you have not subscribed to my Substack yet, a pretty please from me, worthknowing.substack.com. That's worthknowing.substack.com. I hope people will check that out. Really appreciate the support. I had a really cool thing happen I've only had the Substack going for about 2.5 months, and I've just been putting up content. I've just been trying to give people value, put some interesting stuff up there. Oh, thank you, Jim. This is the Substack Live if you want to catch Cliff tomorrow. But I've just been trying to put content up, give people valuable stuff that's worth knowing. But finally, at the end of last week, I started reaching out and asking people, okay, I would love it if you'd become paid subscribers. That's how Substack works. They want people to have paid subscribers. So I started making the ask, and it was great. People really responded. It was tremendous. And I landed at number 47 on the Substack fastest rising charts for accounts, which was cool. Cliff was at number 37. And then we briefly flip-flopped, and I was at 42 and he was 43. I was looking for 47 jokes to make about me versus Trump. But anyway, so that is where you can find me. And if you are among the people who has joined as a paid subscriber, extra super special thank you. But free subscribers are great too. That helps me as well. And so thank you for all of that. I feel like I have if you agree, let Cliff know. I feel like I've done my very best to try to give you your full value for the full hour that you set aside to join Cliff and David. So I will be back on this YouTube channel on Tuesday with my live stream. And you can always catch me on Substack. And I hope people will catch Cliff tomorrow on his Substack live stream. And thanks very much to everyone for being on here, for being with me, for all the chats, all the comments, for being together. It's great. It's, I was saying to Chipmunk Milk earlier, this is the most fun I'm legally allowed to have. And I really makes me feel better. It really does make me feel more energized about where we're at. So I hope it does the same for all of you. Keep it up. Keep at it. I will see you all again very, very soon.